USA.com. I'm here with my normal crew, Will, Mikey, and Ben Slay. Tonight's guest is Colonel Greg Raths, former congressman candidate, former city council representative for, I believe was it Tustin?
Mission Viejo.
Mission Viejo. Welcome tonight, sir. How are you?
Very good. Good to be here, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Will, go ahead. Let's talk a little bit about the Colonel first.
Well, the Colonel Gregory Raths, retired United States Marine Corps, Top Gun graduate, fighter pilot.
I don't hear Will.
Also the author of the book 9 Lives of a Fighter Pilot.
Hold on, Will. I can't hear you. Can everybody else hear Will?
I heard him.
Yes.
Okay. Do you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I hear you, but I don't hear Will.
Huh. Well, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm gonna let Will talk a little bit about you, and then he's introducing you by, a short bio of you, sir.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Will.
Okay, so anyway, author of 9 Lives of a Fighter Pilot, Colonel Greg Raths, served combat missions in Afghanistan and Iraq, and is going to tell his story tonight in our first of a series of our defense series. So Colonel Greg Raths is going to kick this off tonight. And I want to say, and Tony, you might have to be the interpreter here, but I'm anxious to hear Colonel Raths' take on the takedown of the China spy balloon, which was actually an airship, technically. And also, hopefully, as a former congressional candidate, we hope to talk to him a little bit about the State of the Union. So, Tony, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Sir, unfortunately, I know you can't hear Will. He spoke highly of you, your career. So tell the audience a little bit about your career, how it began, where it took you, what you learned from your career, so that the audience knows a little bit about you.
Absolutely. I grew up in a large family in Phoenix, Arizona. 8 children. I have 4 brothers, 3 sisters. My father was my hero, World War II combat bomber pilot over in Europe. He flew the A-20 Havoc, 65 combat missions into Germany, and then D-Day, 2 missions on D-Day. Then he flew in the Battle of the Bulge, winner of Distinguished Flying Cross, multiple air medals, Bronze Star. So I grew up with a father, very patriotic, fought the war that they were supposed to fight, came back, worked hard, didn't really talk about it much, but he taught me character and integrity, honesty. He was my Boy Scout leader. I ended up an Eagle Scout. My 4 brothers were Eagle Scouts. And the war in Vietnam was raging during my high school years, 67 to 70, graduated 71. And I felt, without knowing all the politics at the time behind the war, that it was my war to go to. So after 1 year of college, I joined the Marine Corps officer program to be a jet pilot. The jet age was now in. My father would take us to Luke Air Force Base out of Phoenix and to the air shows, and the jet age was in. I always told my father, I want to do what he did and fly military aircraft. And I joined the officer program in 72, finished college in 75, and historically, the war was over in 75. So by the time I went on active duty, went off to flight school, Vietnam had ended, and I got based here in Southern California in 77, flying the F-4 Phantom. And I made it a 30-year career, something I thought I'd do for 6-7 years and then return to private life. But I really enjoyed flying jets. I flew off the aircraft carrier Midway down there in beautiful San Diego.
Wow.
And I have over 150 carrier landings on that ship in the Phantom. Went on to fly the F-18 Hornet, engaged in Operation Desert Storm as a combat fighter pilot, and flew 75 combat missions myself. and then later as a squadron commander of an F-18 squadron. Went on board the USS Abraham Lincoln and served back in the Persian Gulf during Operation Southern Watch. And when the Blackhawks were shot down in, I believe it was 91 in Somalia, the our task force went off the coast of Somalia and provided close air support to the Army Rangers, and I participated in Operation Restore Hope. Went on to reach the rank of colonel. I was an air group commander, a wing commander. Had the honor to serve 3 years at the White House as the assistant and then chief of staff of the White House military office during the second term of the Clinton administration. So I had a brilliant career. I loved it. Met my wife at the Officers Club at El Toro, raised 3 beautiful children. My son followed my footsteps, 20 years in the Marine Corps flying F-18s. My twin daughters are school teachers in Irvine. So life is good. I'm very proud of my career. I went on to be an airline pilot with JetBlue. I'm very proud of my children's career. My wife was a school teacher for 40 years in grade school, high school, and she finished at Cal State Fullerton as a professor there. So, and then I went into politics, as you know. I guess we could go into that here shortly, but that's kind of a thumbnail of my life. 69 years old, going strong, still ready to serve my country whenever they need me, or serve my community. So I went into politics several years ago, and I served 2 terms on the city council of Mission Viejo. I was the mayor in 2019, congressional candidate as Republican nominee in 2020 for the 45th congressional district. I won the primary, and I lost the general election to Katie Porter, who is the current congresswoman. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So just kind of enjoying life now.
Well, I can't blame you, but I have to ask you, what do you miss the most about being a fighter pilot? Right?
I miss the camaraderie of the fellow pilots and the maintenance crew and the people around the squadron. It was just everybody had your back. Everyone took care of you. They wanted the best, fly the best airplanes, the best equipped, the best maintained airplanes. We helped each other as pilots to be better. We trained and trained, so when combat did come, we were ready. It wasn't a learning process when we went into battle. It was just very easy to get, not easy, but it was an opportunity to put all that training to work. And I flew in Desert Storm and the other combat missions, and it was just a good feeling. And I'm very patriotic. I'm a patriot. Love my country. My father would take us kids out in front of the house on Veterans Day and Memorial Day. We hung the flag in front of our house. We saluted it, Pledge of Allegiance under God and all that. And it was just a wonderful time to grow up. I grew up in the 60s. You know, you started out, I was 7. At 60, I was a little altar boy, you know, short hair, very, very innocent. And at the end of the 60s, I was 17, you know, high school, long hair. It was an amazing decade to grow up in with, you know, we had the assassinations of the 2 Kennedys, Martin Luther King, we had the Vietnam War, we had rock and roll, we had the Beatles, and, you know, I survived the 60s, and off I went to my career in the Marine Corps.
And yet, you talk about the 60s and all that was going on. We didn't have the issues we have today, right? There seemed to be a lot more going on in the 60s than there is today, but yet we're in trouble, right? The country's divided.
Yes.
Continue to happen. Neighbors don't know each other. They don't talk to each other. As a young person in the 60s, when I was growing up, you know, there was adults and we were very respectful of the adults. Yes, sir. No, ma'am.
Yes.
We didn't throw rocks at their houses. We didn't break their windows. We didn't attack older people.
No.
So it's difficult as a society to see what's happening to our republic. It bugs the heck out of me that not that the old ways are better, but that we've gotten this far away from being kind to each other, just trying to figure out, hey, what do you need? Well, how can I help you? When you were talking about being in the military and camaraderie, that's what I miss. I miss the guys. I miss talking to them. I miss them having my back. I miss sitting together, crying about what's going on within the chain of command or our mission. But we were always there for each other, and that's something that doesn't happen anymore. You can't depend on your neighbor for whatever reason.
No, and I remember as a young boy, I played Little League and Pee Wee League baseball. You put your glove on your handlebars and you grab a baseball, you get on your bike and you go down to the fields at the local schools or wherever you played baseball. You didn't have to worry about, anybody threatening you on the way. Life was very simple. And although you did have the backdrop of, the war and the assassinations, as I mentioned, but life as a young preteen and teen was simple, but you didn't have all the social media, you didn't have all the problems that these kids today are having. But you're right what you said. All my neighbors and my parents' friends was always Mr. Gannum, Mr. Burns, Mrs. Gannum. It wasn't, that biatch down the street or anything like that. It was very respectful, and I learned that in Boy Scouts. And a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, brave, clean, reverent. And I always remember that, and I really worked hard to give people the respect. And I remember my one neighbor, and to this day, because I'm getting up there, I was on his lawn, and he's like, "Get off my lawn!" And I remember I said, "When I'm older, I don't want to be that guy, yelling at these kids." So I still remember that from 60 years ago. I said, I don't want to be like Mr. Burns, but I always respected him. And I haven't been that way. I'm very helpful. I now drive kids to school. I drive for this company called Hop Skip Drive, where you pick up kids and take them to school. Most of these kids are mentally challenged. I think we talked about this once.
Right, we did, yes.
Yeah, then I pick them up from school afterwards, and I'm very respectful, get them strapped in. If they got any problems, I make sure the door locks are locks. And I really enjoy that because I didn't want to be that grumpy old man. And hopefully I'm not.
Well, no, and you're staying active, and that's important. And to me, that's a big deal because I have a grandchild with special needs. So we need people like you that really want to help and stay engaged. As long as you have the energy to do it, I beg you to continue to do it.
And here's the thing, the stress on parents, with a child with a disability of any sort, and especially a physical disability.
Oh, I think you froze up there.
He froze.
Yeah.
Are you there, sir?
Yeah. It's actually kind of interesting because when I was growing up, I worked for the Red Cross at a special needs school, and we would take the kids with cerebral palsy and stuff like that out to a swimming pool during the daytime, and we'd work with them, and we had a blast.
Right.
But they wear you out.
It does wear you out. But again, I think part of the problem is that we don't have the energy to want to continue doing the right thing for people in general, right? It's just easy to say, it's not my business, right? Let somebody else deal with that instead of engaging the situation, whether we agree with it or not, right? I mean, how many of you watched, the chairman speak last night? Oh, there you are. You back?
Yeah, but a lot of these parents, they both work, and these latch door kids have some issues, when they're home alone. That's where the problems start.
Right.
But life is very simple growing up, and I try to let the youth today know that life is good, stay engaged, be successful, and life will be good.
Can Tony, can Greg see or hear me now?
I don't know. I don't think he can hear you.
Who's that?
Will, can you hear Will?
No, I don't hear Will.
He can't hear you, Will.
Strange. Okay, well, tell him I'm wearing his shirt, number one.
Well, it's probably good, because Will could be something,
He's wearing your shirt, he says.
He's wearing your shirt, sir.
That's a good thing.
So ask him, Tony.
Well, I can't hear you. I take it he can hear me. Is that right?
Yeah, he can hear you.
Yes, I hear. Yeah.
He wants to ask you a question. Hold on. What is it, Will?
Ask him about his final combat flight on February 27th.
He wants to know about your final combat flight on February 27th.
Okay. In combat, in Desert Storm, I take it. He's talking.
Right.
Yes, a final day
Yes,
of
sir.
the war. And I came back. I had released all my ordnance, and I knew the war was about over. Desert Storm was winding down because the Iraqis were fleeing Kuwait. They're on this main road, just heading back to Iraq, and they were abandoning their tanks and they're abandoning all their military vehicles. And as I landed, I came back and I landed. And when every time we land, I was based out of Bahrain. There's a base called Sheikh Isa. It's a American base, joint base with the Bahrainians. And I came back, and after you land, you refuel before you take it in and shut it down. And I wrote on a piece of paper, the guy was refueling me, one of our troops, and I wrote, "The war is over." And he looked at me and gave me some thumbs up, and that was it. But I remember that night, I hadn't been sleeping, obviously, with all the adrenaline. You get 3-4 hours of sleep, and you go out and fly a night mission, 2-day missions. And I slept for like 20 straight hours because your body finally shut down and just to relax. In fact, I slept so long, I had night duty, and I was like 3 hours late to relieve, but he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy that I was late 3 hours. I tried to explain to him, but it didn't go over too well.
You know, Tony, I asked him this question. On March 6th, 1982, he married Lucy. And he married Lucy in St. Gregory's Church. Now, was that ironic or what?
Willie Boy here wants to know, March 6th, you married that beautiful lady that you have, right?
Yes. Yeah, what happened was I got based at El Toro Air Base in Santa Ana, which is a major master jet base, home of the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. Yeah. Over 5,000 sailors and Marines and their families. I got here in '77. I flew 2 carrier cruises off the Midway to the Middle East, and then actually I was in the Persian Gulf during when the Shah of Iran fell. And we provided some combat missions as the Shah exited Iran, and we're kind of hoping he'd be back or has some stable government by now. It's been 45 years, and it's still a mess. But I was at the Officers Club in 1980 at El Toro, and in walks a brunette and a blonde. I knew the blonde, and she goes, "Oh, I want you to meet my friend Lucy." And that's where I met my wife at the Officers Club at El Toro, and the romance ballooned. And in '82 we got married.
St. Gregory's.
St. Gregory's.
Right?
I think he froze again.
He froze again.
Froze again.
Well, you know, while we're waiting for the Colonel to come back, we have another Marine Corps veteran out here, Major Benjamin Slay. Tell us a little bit about your history in the Marine Corps.
No, Greg is back.
Oh, Greg's back. Okay.
Did a great job.
There we go.
Yeah. Hey, sir, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, to sidetrack a little bit on you, what do you think about Chairman Biden's speech last night?
Oh my God, it was bizarre. You know, I try to give both parties, the benefit of the doubt. I'm kind of swung from I was far right to more moderate. I guess I'd like to call myself more independent now than a Republican, but I like to give the Democrats benefit of the doubt. But I didn't think it was delivered very well at all. The president says he's a uniter, but everything he said last night was more divisive. It was just not good and was not presented well. And it was not good. It was bizarre. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, you can translate this. But
It's
when
not
he,
the Democrat Party of my father or of Jack
Right.
Kennedy. This is
Right.
a
No,
party
it's
that
not. No, it's
it's a
not.
party that's gone so off to, they don't know what a woman is. As you heard,
Yeah.
men can have babies now.
Don't
People
forget, you can have a menstrual cycle too if you're a man.
yeah, I'm glad I don't have those, but I saw the cramps and the suffering my wife went through for
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
I'm glad I didn't have that. I mean, I know as man and a woman growing up, but now it's all sorts of things.
And then it's crazy because they cater to certain groups. Whether it's BLM or LGBTQT, WFYZ organizations, we're moving to a side that I've never seen. Um, and I'm 62 years old, and I'm amazed at what goes on and what people are starting to buy into, which is really crazy for me because you can see that the guy is not sane. He's not there mentally, right? Imagine what other countries think about us when that's our leader. That's the leader of the free world. Um, in their eyes, we all know somebody else is running it, but in their eyes, he's the guy that makes decisions. He can push the button. He can get the codes, and this guy's not there. It's just
Yeah,
not
it's
there.
well,
not
I have
good.
to,
It's not
I have
good, and you're right. The leader of the free world, he's not leading it. He's barely hanging on. I don't know what we're going to do, and the vice president doesn't look very competent. I mean, her sole job is to secure the border. She's a border czar, and that's just been terrible. So right now, the country's in a crisis with leadership in Washington, and it's got to change here pretty soon.
And I
hey,
want to
Tony,
thank all the
tell,
people who had that happen.
Go ahead, Will.
yeah, I know the colonel can't hear me, but once we get rid of the kleptocrats, the kleptomaniacs out there that are stealing taxpayer dollars for programs that are not the federal government's responsibility, well, then we will make progress. But both parties are responsible for this. Both parties are culpable in this. And, the one thing you do have to give the president kudos over is giving the order and trusting his military to take down that spy balloon,
Right.
which was actually an airship, as I've said before. But he gave the order and trusted his military to do it. They did it with
I'm
precision.
sorry, I can't hear Will.
Yeah, I'll translate. Once he finishes. Will's talking about the balloon. He's giving the president kudos for shooting down the balloon.
I'm
Right.
giving the president kudos for giving the order.
Don't even
I'm
go
giving.
there. I mean,
I'm giving.
first of all, as a
No, you
fighter
didn't
pilot,
translate it
if I
right,
shot down
Tony.
a balloon, I would never admit it to anybody. I
No,
mean,
he's giving the president kudos because he gave the order to shoot the balloon
Order,
down.
and the military did it with
Well,
surgical precision.
that should have been shot down over the Aleutian Islands.
I
That
disagree.
was way too
I
late.
disagree.
I mean, it should have been shot down. It should have been shot down the minute it went into
If
USA.
we knew January the 20th that it was coming our way, that's when we should have taken it out.
Right.
And what about the three balloons? And what about
And
the
now
three
we're
balloons
learning
under
that these
President
things
Trump?
been flying around all the time, and the Pentagon was keeping it quiet. I don't know if that's even true. This is getting really bizarre.
Yeah, we don't even know.
I heard a report that Mathis was the one that didn't tell Trump if things were going on.
Like that would have made a difference.
Well, at this point, I don't care what happened in the past. I'm talking about now, right?
Right.
No, but if we don't learn from history, Tony, if we don't learn from history, we're bound to repeat it, and we keep doing the same thing over. It's the very definition of insanity.
Ben is back. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Yeah, hey, great. I just wanted to add this. They talk about Montana and big sky country and flyover country, and the original excuse was, well, we couldn't shoot it down over U.S. soil because the debris might fall and injure people. Well, when you're over Montana, the odds of any people getting hit by a falling balloon with electrical equipment on it are so sparse, and we would have had the evidence right then. Instead, we let it drift for 5 days. over Montana, coming down the Midwest through the central states, and then actually
And there was a reason for that.
Yeah, over
Well,
north
And there
and
had
South
to be a reason for
Carolina.
that. Look,
So
look,
what
the
was the
payload,
What was the reason?
the payload of that balloon was the size of an airliner. Now, what was on there?
Yeah.
We'll
We
never
don't know.
We'll never
We
know.
do not know yet.
Yeah.
We may
We
never
won't
know.
We will never know. We will
But I
never know
would-
what was in there.
You know, we were talking about Greg was talking about the 1960s. If it wasn't for President Kennedy's patience during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s, we could have been on the brink of World War III.
Yeah.
We were anyway.
Agree.
That close.
Agree.
Yeah.
We were that close. And if it wasn't for President Kennedy's patience and thoughtfulness on how to handle it, because his generals wanted to do an invasion of all things.
Right.
And so President Kennedy said, no, we're going to do a blockade.
You're
It was
right.
not a popular decision, but it worked.
You're right. Kennedy was brilliant. He did the right thing. That's what a leader's supposed to do, right? You take
And I
advice
think in the Chinese balloon situation, President Biden did the right thing. He
did the
trusted
right
his
thing.
military.
Giving the order to shoot it down, it was the right thing. What was not the right thing is waiting as long as we waited. I don't agree with you there. We should never
Well,
wait.
that would be on NORAD in the military,
Exactly.
not the president.
They didn't get he should have given the order, right? But we know he's not the real president. So let's not kid ourselves, right? For all we know, it's Michelle Obama has her hand up his ass telling him what to do.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know, right? And we're never going to know. So we can argue about it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. But at the end of the day, we're never going to know the truth.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I told people back when I was on the radio in 2007. I'm going to tell you the same thing. When Democrats were saying George W. Bush is not my president, I said, guess what? The American people picked him. He is in the Oval Office. Whether you like him or not, he is your president. And
nobody said that he's not our president.
I agree with his policies, but he is the president of the United States.
Listen, Will, just listen for a second, okay? You're going on a tangent. Nobody here
I
said
absolutely
that. Listen, just shut the hell up for a second. Nobody here is saying that he's not our president. So what are you coming up with that? All we're saying is we don't think he made the right decision. That's all we're saying. So you're going off on a tangent that somebody
I think he made the right decision. So I'm outnumbered here.
It's not that you're outnumbered. You just never want to hear somebody else's opinion.
No, and I heard the opinion.
I mean,
I heard it.
He makes
I just
mistakes all
disagree
the
with
time. Even when it came down to Osama bin Laden, when he was sitting in the Situation Room with Barack Obama and all the rest of them, he said, "No, we should go get him."
Yeah,
he does it constantly.
I'm glad he did it. My point is, I'm not glad when he did it. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. He needed to shoot it down. He should have shot it down when it was coming. When they saw it in Alaska, that's when they should have shot it down. If you know something's coming, you don't wait. You just don't wait. You send the wrong message to the Chinese, right? Which brings me back to the
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Okay, but
what about Pearl Harbor?
We saw them coming. We didn't sink their boats.
Look, Will, I wasn't there in 1942. I don't know what happened. I'm talking about now, right? I know something's coming now, I want to fix it now, right? Our military is depleted. We're giving equipment to freaking Ukraine to support that BS war that's going on, while we got Navy ships sitting in here where we don't have the parts to fix the ships to put them back out to sea.
Well, and this goes back to the point that this is both a Republican and Democratic issue.
Nobody said it was
for the fact.
I don't disagree with you. It is a bi-party thing. Both parties are wrong, but you keep going on tangents. Anybody with common sense knows that both parties are at fault. Nobody here. Colonel Rath just said, "Hey, I'm trying to consider myself an independent because he's over the far right BS, just like I was over it." Right?
Yeah. You know, one thing that Sarah Huckabee Sanders said last night in her rebuttal to the State of the Union was, she said, "This isn't really a conflict between the left and the right. This is a conflict between what's normal and what's crazy. And as Ronald Reagan said, and as the Colonel alluded to, this isn't your father's Democrat Party anymore. And like Ronald Reagan said, he didn't leave the Democrat Party left him. So,
Right.
I mean, she said it well. It's the difference between normal and crazy, where you just lose all of your thinking to let the government and the party do your thinking for you.
Well,
And this is no longer the Republican Party of Lincoln or Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, yeah.
no, it's not.
And I don't like the Republican Party the way it is right now.
I don't think anybody with common sense likes either party the way they are, right? That's why the
I
Tulsi
would
Gabbards
agree
of the
with that.
world, that's why the Tulsi Gabbards of the world said, I'm done, right? Because she doesn't like what the Democrats are doing, right? And if you are a sane human being, you don't like what either party's doing, right? Because what they're doing, and the Colonel brought this up, they keep dividing the nation, right? And how do you do that? You divide families, you divide friends, you divide neighborhoods, and you put people against each other because people look up to these people, right? Well, it was on YouTube, so it must be true. Or the president said it must be true. Half the crap he said on that speech he gave was a lie, right? But people don't understand that, or they don't want to believe it's a lie. Well, he said it, so it must be true.
You're talking
Well,
about the State of the Union.
Right.
Yeah, he said the one
Okay.
thing last night where, he believes in law and this crap. And yet when the riots were going on in Minneapolis and Kamala Harris, I'm going, yeah, sure you do.
Right.
It's
Look,
bullshit.
Well, the other thing, and now the flip side of that speech was when he accused the Republicans of wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare and put it in the sunset clause. The fact of the matter was, Joe Biden, as a senator, teamed up with Charles Grassley twice in the 1980s and 1990s to cut Social Security, to cut Medicare. And it showed him to be a hypocrite on that issue.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is not a friend of Social Security or Medicare, no matter what
He's
he
not a
says.
friend of
No,
America.
he is
He's out
not.
for himself.
And he lied about all that. And again, I'll say anybody with common sense would know that he was lying about the
And that's why
Republican
Marjorie Taylor Greene last night, stood up and called him a liar.
Yeah.
So-
That aspect is right out of the Democrat playbook manual written by Saul Alinsky called
Yeah.
Rules for Radicals, in which he said, accuse the other side of that which you're doing. And
Right,
That's what it was. Major, that's what it was. He was political transparent. He was taking his record and putting it on the Republicans. You're
Right.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
So-
a total
so-
lie.
So Ben, you're an attorney, right?
Yeah.
Who wins the lawsuit?
Yeah. Well, if the truth be known, let the truth come out, and let freedom reign, let freedom ring. Yeah.
But in reality, who wins the lawsuit? He who sues first, right?
well, that's certainly one of the things.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually you're either going to settle out of court or you're going to lose, because at least in California, I'll speak for California, right? If you sue first, whether you're right or wrong, people are going to settle out of court because they don't want to be drugged through the mud. And you know what I mean? It's the same philosophy, right? Let's point the finger that way, and then everybody's going to assume that they're the guilty party, not me, right? I'm the one that's doing all the dirty work. But if I accuse Johnny Smith, then Johnny Smith is going to look like he's the criminal, right? Not me.
Right. That's
So
right. Yeah.
The court of public opinion.
and they do it so well, right? I mean, we can say whatever we want. The Democratic Party is freaking brilliant. They know exactly.
Hey, they are better organized too. Real quick, getting back to our guest, Tony, ask him about the story of boarding Air Force One at Andrews Air Force Base in 1999. That's a fascinating story.
Willie wants to know about your boarding Air Force One in 1991.
1999.
99, I'm sorry.
I worked at the White House 96 to 99. So I flew with the president on most trips. my second and third year there to ensure that the president's military support was taken care of. Air Force One was there, was helicopters, communication gear, all that was together. But I unfortunately I can't hear Will. But what I heard through you was he was concerned on the way the shutdown happened. And I don't like the way the Democrats throw it up. Well, it happened 3 times during Trump. They keep using Trump. Trump's not president anymore. Get over it. And Trump's like, I never heard of these balloons flying over our country when I was president. So I'm tired of that crap. You're in charge now. You're the Democrats. You're in charge. But both parties got issues, like I said. And my problem with the Republican Party, and I loved Ronald Reagan. That's when I really became a Republican. When I was in the military after Jimmy Carter, our airplanes were just junk. We're flying junk in the sky. And 2 of them, if you read my book, 9 Lives of a Fighter Pilot, 2 of them burned up, 1 on the ground and 1 in the air. I had to get out of those airplanes quick. And Reagan comes in and takes care of us, gave us a pay raise, new airplanes, new equipment inside and out. But what disappointed me when I ran for U.S. Congress, because I was just sitting at home and I wanted to get involved in politics. And when I won the nomination, there's 6 of us in 2026 Republicans. I win the nomination from the party. I beat the other 5. And when I called for the cavalry in Washington, we can win this seat. You're looking at a combat decorated Marine, 3 combat tours, president of a company, very successful in life. And I was running against a college professor, law professor from UC Irvine. And it was very winnable, and the cavalry never came. They looked by, passed it, and said, we'll look at 2022. Find a better candidate. How can you find a better candidate? So they get another candidate in 2022, and he loses to Katie Porter. So I'm very disappointed in my party, or my former party.
Right, and it's a story that is very common in the Republican Party. They love to abandon ship instead of helping you. Right? They'd rather just walk away because there's so much money involved in elections that, hey, if the other party offers them money, they're going to go that route. Right.
Tony, you can articulate this.
Also, when I ran in 2020, COVID was just hitting the streets, and it was very hard to campaign during the epidemic. But I thought it was very winnable. And when I asked the party for help, they weren't there. I believe being a white male didn't help. They were looking for more minority candidates, female candidates. And to go against a female, which was Katie Porter, and I just didn't agree with that. I look at the resume of the candidate, and look at what this person's done, male or female, straight or gay, who cares? Look at the resume and the pedigree of the candidate, and it was totally overlooked, and it was really disappointing. But I moved on. I enjoyed serving my city for 8 years, 2 terms as a council member and as a mayor. That was very rewarding. You only need 2 others out of council of 5 to get something through. Whereas if I went to Washington, you need to have about 220 plus to help you get through a bill, to get it passed. So maybe it's best I didn't go to Washington, but I really thought I could really help the country. And that's what I've done all my life, is help the country, help other people. And that's what I was looking to do. But my 2 terms here on council, it's very rewarding. We got a lot done. It's an amazing city. We run a budget surplus every year. We keep a $30-some+ million in reserves for a rainy day. We're able to distribute a lot, some of that during COVID, to some of these businesses that were struggling. And that's where I really felt rewarding, to be in a political position to help businesses and help people in the community.
That's a great story, sir. Hey, Will, you had something to say?
Yeah, well, first thing I was going to say is I still wear the gray grass shirt with pride.
You still wears your shirt, sir, with pride.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Will,
as far as I'm concerned,
very helpful in my 2020 campaign. And then I did run once again in 2022. I lost in a primary to young Kim, who was very divisive and lied. And I'm very disappointed in her as a fellow, at the time, a fellow Republican who just totally distorted my record. And she won because she spent $5 million just trying to destroy my reputation.
Well, she's a Republican in name only, believe me.
And Will was there helping me along the way.
Yeah, he did. Go ahead, Will.
But anyway, there's a quote. See, this is going to be hard to translate. But anyway, he the director of the Special Contingency Programs Office provided Colonel Raths with classified briefs. In doing so, the colonel was comfortable concerning the safety of the president and White House staff members. Whether the president was a Republican or a Democrat, Colonel Raths did his job and did it well.
And I think when you're a military or service member, you don't get concerned about parties, right? Because we answer to the person in charge.
Right.
We're smart enough to follow a chain of command in the armed forces.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, sir.
I worked 3 years at the White House. Bill Clinton was president. He was a Democrat. I was a Republican.
That's what I was just talking about, yeah.
Whatever my job was, take care of the commander in chief, ensure they got the right support he needed. I was there. It wasn't like, oh, he's a Democrat, I'm not going to help.
Right.
My God.
And that's, I think that's what's missing from society itself. We get so caught up in the parties they're in, or if they're a Christian, or if they're Catholic, or if they're a Jew. We get caught up in things that really don't matter, right?
Right.
Everybody has one thing in common. We all want to live a good life. We want to take care of our families. We want to feel safe. We want to feel taken care of. We want to make sure that if our wife or kids are walking the streets at night with their dog, that nothing's going to happen to them. I always felt safe in the military, right? The biggest culture shock.
Our brothers and sisters.
The biggest culture shock for me was when I got out in 2005 is working with civilians.
Yeah.
I had a horrible time my first 2 years adjusting to the civilian population. And to this day, I still do. I still have a hard time with civilians. Right?
Well, that's what
I enjoy
Tony,
working.
yeah, same thing. I got out in 2004, and I went to be a commercial airline pilot. I flew the Airbus 320, and people wouldn't show up to work. I'm like, what do you mean they're not at work? It just wasn't in our vocabulary. You know, right. In the military, you show up or you're in deep trouble.
Oh, and if you're really sick, then you go see a doctor, right?
Correct.
It's not, you know, it was a different world, different life, and
it was. And they always I got 10 sick days. I'm going to use one. I go, but you're not sick. Well, I can use it. I never heard that in my vocabulary. Use a sick day if you're not sick. I go, what are you guys talking about? I go, we got an air crew together. We got to fly from JFK to Long Beach, and we're missing a crew member. And we had to wait on the tarmac till we could find a replacement. And it was just really foreign to me. It took me a while to get.
It's still foreign to me. I deal with employee issues all day. It's very foreign to me. So, I don't think I'm ever used to that.
Yeah, after several years with the airlines, I left the airlines and I became president of a company here in Orange County. And same thing, though, workers were coming in. We're supposed to start at 8, they're 8:15, 8:20, and they're taking 2-hour lunches. And so finally, I installed a fingerprint device where when they come in, they put their fingerprint in. At the exact moment they show up to work, it gets registered. And when you leave for lunch, you fingerprint. And you know what happened? They start showing up at 8 o'clock, and also they started having 1-hour lunches instead of 2-hour lunches, and our productivity went up like 30%. You know, and I learned that in the military. You show up to work, you better be there at work and working.
Yep, I'm all there.
Tony,
and got the company very successful. We sold it, made a chunk of change, and then I went into politics. That's how that all started. So I had military experience, I had business experience, I was labor. As a pilot, you're labor, you're not in leadership, and so I learned it all. And so when I went into politics, I thought I'd be the perfect candidate. And congressionally, it didn't work out, but at the city level, it worked. In the community level here, it worked out great.
and your city is much better for you being there for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very
Will,
safe.
you gonna say something, Will?
Yeah, I was going to say the reason I go on a tangent from time to time is because I'm so frustrated with the candidates the California picks. And so Will Griffith is pissed off, period.
Good. I
And-
want you to be pissed off.
But the other thing is, I want you to ask Greg about his, in 1997, about his representation for the NATO summit in 1997.
Hey, sir, he wanted me to ask you about 1997 NATO.
Yes.
The NATO summit.
We went to a NATO conference in, I believe it was in Spain. I flew with the president. And, but here's another time it was just a NATO conference, I believe it was in Madrid. And then we went on to Poland, and we went up to one of the Scandinavian countries and met some royalty. But one trip I really enjoyed was we went to Tel Aviv. Netanyahu was in prime minister of Israel. Arafat ran to Palestine, PLO, and President Clinton was really working hard to get some type of peace. We had 3 meetings, one in Israel, and then later we had one at Camp David with then Prime Minister Barack, and then we had one in Maryland, and he worked really, really hard. But we found out that Arafat it wasn't in him as a military guy. If he got peace, he would be out of a job. And we basically offered him everything he wanted. Not that we were going to give it to him, but President Clinton was a master diplomat, and I got to see all that. And we flew we took helicopters from Tel Aviv to Gaza. There's a airport in Gaza, and the president had obviously on his own helicopter. Then we had another couple other helicopters to bring staffers. We met with Arafat, we met with PLO members and Palestinians, and try to work with them. And it was getting later and later and later. Usually a 3-hour meeting, it turned into like a 7-hour meeting. And the pilots were reaching their crew day of the helicopters, and I'm like telling the presidential staff, like, we need to wrap this up. We need to get the president back on his helicopters. These pilots' crew days are running out, meaning at a certain point they can't fly until they rest for another 8 hours, obviously to keep the commander-in-chief safe. And they said to me, well, if our pilots won't fly, we'll get some Israeli pilots to fly some helicopters. I'm like, no, we're not going to put our president of the United States in an Israeli helicopter. He's only going to fly on Marine One. Now let's wrap up this meeting and get the president on this helicopter, in which they did. So I had to use a little of my authority, as a colonel, to wrap up the meeting and get back to Tel Aviv. So, but some of his senior staff were giving me some ration, like, this is more important than a few pilots who don't have enough sleep. I was trying to make it so emphatic that no, they need their rest for the safety of the president. You just don't fly presidents, someone hasn't slept for 20 hours.
Right.
So, but that's where I interjected a few times when I worked at the military office to ensure that our president was well taken care of militarily.
Now, that's a great story. That's a great story because people don't get to hear things like that, right? They think that, military people are robots and they're up 24 hours a day and they don't get the opportunity to rest. And so it's a great story to share with our audience.
Yeah, I wrote a book. I mentioned early non-biased of a fighter pilot. I mentioned all that. And when I ran, they would use that book that, oh, he was a Republican. He worked for Bill Clinton. He's a Clinton Republican. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? I mean, this is the rhetoric they used against me when I decided to run for political office. And little did they know how us in the military, doesn't matter what the party is of the president, we will support and we will follow orders 100%.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we also have Major
That's why
Ben
I had
Slay
problems with that one lieutenant colonel who worked for Trump, who's worked at the White House, Davinovich or whatever it was.
Yes, I forget his name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he listened into that phone call to the Ukrainian president, and instead of keeping your mouth shut, because you listen in and you make sure the communications is working and all the signals are right, and you don't go in front of a committee and say, well, this is what I thought I heard. You don't do that. My God. And everyone's like, oh, he's a hero. He saved the country. No, he's a traitor in my eye. He was a freaking traitor.
He's not a warrior at all.
Was his name.
No, he got escorted out of the White House as he deserved. And hopefully nobody will ever give that guy the time of day. But that was just wrong.
Yeah.
Because I saw a lot when I was there for 3 years. You see a lot behind the scenes. And you don't write a book, a tell-all book of what you saw. Good or bad, what you saw, you keep your mouth shut. As long as something's not illegal or threatening to a person or a woman or something like that,
Or
then
the
you
country,
speak up. But there's some things you saw and heard that could probably help the other party, and you could just squeal. But I would never do that.
Most
good
real warriors will
while you
never
were
do
there?
that.
No.
Hey, Will, you had a question for Mr. Ben Slay.
Major Ben Slay, you have a lot in common. What I want to know, and you can translate this as you're talking about it, but you and Greg Grass probably went through the same kind of boot camp when you first enlisted, right?
We did, yeah. I'm 4 years ahead of Colonel Rass. I graduated high school in '67. I joined the Marines in February of 1970 in my junior year of college, because I actually wanted to go to Vietnam because I felt only the people that had been there and come back had any credibility on the issue. So I trained at Quantico for 2 summers, the summer of 70 and 71 in the PLC program, which is like ROTC, except you just go for boot camp in the summers and don't do anything on campus during the year. And when I graduated in July of 71, our battalion commander, who was Major Charles Robb, later to become Governor Robb of Virginia, and Senator Robb, told us that the president, which was Nixon at the time, was withdrawing Marine units and wouldn't replace them. So we trained to go to Vietnam as infantry officers on the ground, but we never got sent. And it was then I learned about the law option. And the Marines basically paid a stipend, paid most of my way through law school. Then I came on active duty 4 years as a judge advocate. But Colonel Rass and I had that same experience growing up at that same time with Vietnam and the backdrop. We were both willing to go and serve, and that's just how that worked. Now, the interesting thing, I mentioned Major Charles Robb.
He married a Johnson daughter.
Right? We lost him again.
Yeah.
There you are.
Oh, we
He'll
lost
be back. Yeah. It goes in and out. Major Robb served at the White House on guard duty, and he met Linda Bird Johnson. Yeah, met Linda Bird while he was there, and ultimately married her. And because he was then married into the Johnson family, if you will, that gave him his political career, in which he then became the governor of Virginia and then U.S. Senator from Virginia.
And ran for president for a short time.
He did. And I happened to see his wife one time on an airplane. We were flying. She was up in the first class section. I was in the back, but I'd passed her and I gave a note to the flight attendant if she would give her to tell her that I served under her husband's command at Quantico, and she wrote a very nice note back. Very gracious lady. Appreciate her.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, Tony, I'm gonna give you and the gentleman the floor tonight. I apologize for my tangent, though. There's going to be more tangents to come. And
we want more tangents. We want more tangents from you.
When I get angry, I get angry. I'm passionate, more passionate than angry.
I don't think it's anger. I think you're just very passionate about what you believe in, and you're very frustrated, like the rest of us are, about what's happening to our republic.
Which is why this show is so important, because we can exchange those ideas and those passions and try to come up with a solution. So I'm going to leave you with this tonight.
Yes, sir.
Save a horse, ride a cowboy.
Not a cowboy.
Good night, Will.
Good.
So, gentlemen, Colonel Rath, Ben, Mikey, what do you think? Who do you think is running the country?
That's a tough one.
Because we know for sure that Biden's not going to run for re-election. There's just no way that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we know it's not going to be Kamala Harris.
He said
Kamala,
he talked to.
I
He
think
talked to
Barack
Barack Obama
Obama
every
has
day.
a lot to do with who's running the country.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
If you look at it ultimately,
A lot
who
of
has
his staff
provided-
work for President Biden.
Yeah.
I think Ron claims they're good friends with the Obamas. So the Obamas probably have a lot of input, and
He's
his
on the
former
phone with him all
staffers.
the time.
Yeah.
And I think
Maybe start-
provided the money for the Obamas, and I think you
Right.
go back to, is the vice president and putting people out on bail that had been convicted of crimes and so forth. It's George Soros money somehow in all these different organizations that he runs. He's got his hand on it, I think. So you might say he's the ultimate power broker, or at least his organizations that he's got.
right. I mean, there's got to be somebody, with the money. Now, who do you think? We know Governor Newsom wants to be president. We all know that, especially us in California. But I don't think the Democrats are stupid enough to put him up. I think they'd like to have Michelle Obama run for president.
Mm-hmm.
What better
They
candidate
would, but I don't think she wants it.
what better candidate? Somebody that is loved, right? Is a BLM supporter, is an Antifa supporter, very popular in the Democratic world, in the Democrat Party.
She's number one. I would think they would want.
Right. I think that's my opinion. I know some people think I'm crazy, but I think that they would choose her over Newsom in a heartbeat, because Newsom is an accident waiting to happen, right? If he gets involved in a competition, he's going to lose.
Yeah, she was there in the White House for 8 years. She saw, daily what was going on. So I think people would be comfortable with her running, to be honest with over Newsom. Newsom's been a disaster here in California. The only thing that kept him afloat was all this federal money that kept pouring into the state, from the stupid Inflation Reduction Act and all this other stuff. And now that it's ready to hit the fan, and they're looking at a 20 million plus or billion plus deficit for next year because all that federal money is stopped. And he started up all these programs that won't be funded, and it'll be a house of cards here pretty soon.
Well, and then you also have the issue that his wife's nonprofit, she's charging, the school systems and organizations money for a nonprofit organization. I'd love to see where that's going to end up. I mean,
Right.
we already know she hung out to Weinstein and was part of that lawsuit. So we know she's pretty dirty. I mean,
yeah. Plus, all the homeless in San Francisco, LA, San Diego, it's starting to have a major problem.
Yep.
The crime problems in California, the fact that thousands are leaving every day, leaving the state. We lost a congressional seat. We went from 53 to 52 seats, the first time in the history of California. Tax-wise, it's not a good state to be in. Education is 48 out of 50. Highest tax, highest gas tax, highest income tax. It's not a good state to live in, except the weather. The weather,
right?
The weather's fantastic, and you pay for it, unfortunately.
My biggest thought was they're going to tell Kamala Harris she got.
I mean, everyone's freezing their butts off in the East, and you're watching these football games, and even Dallas was frozen over for 4 days. And it's just the weather keeps me here, and the
60 out
grandkids
here in Washington. 60
and my
in
wife,
Washington
she's not willing to leave.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we people like us still live here, sir. The weather's great. My wife and I talk about that all the time, that we kind of live in the perfect place. If you want to go to the snow, you can go to the mountains, go to the beach the same day. You can go to the desert and hang out. But the politics are destroying this beautiful state.
Yeah, and you go down to You go to the beaches. You could snow ski in the morning and lay on the beach in the afternoon. I mean, where can you do that? So I mean,
Yeah.
I was sitting on top of a ship today, 70-degree weather, warm, beautiful ocean, military people all around me. And you're like, God, this is perfect. This is just a perfect life. But then we
What
wake
ship?
up and realize we're in California.
what ship were you on?
I was on the USS Essex.
Essex. Okay.
Essex today, yeah.
Have you been on the Midway? I spent a year of my life on
Yes.
it.
I've been on the Midway, and I'm looking forward to going on the USS Reagan when it comes in for repair.
Oh, there you go.
That's the one.
Yeah,
I
I've
want
been
to
on like 8 or 9 carriers. I was on the Kitty Hawk, the Ranger, the Midway, the Constellation, the Enterprise, Coral Sea, the Eisenhower, and then my last cruise was on the Abraham Lincoln. But I just love flying off aircraft carriers. I mean, I got really, really good at it, and it was such a rush. And then taking off, flying a combat mission, and coming back was pretty cool.
Well, guys, our time is up for tonight. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Tony Rodriguez Show. You can follow me at Tony Rodriguez. You can go to my Facebook page, Tony for the Republic. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody, and thanks for being on the show, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tony.
for your
Thanks for
service,
having me.
John.